Right. Yeah, if we go back to what I said about postmodernity, breaking the pseudo-unity, the kind of colonialist homogenizing unity of modernity, postmodernity breaks that, makes a fracture. And then that fracture is maintained by socioeconomic political forces for their own advantage. And so the global intimacy disorder is the non-reweaving of that web, right? Like, so it's in a sense, like at this point become a structural feature of the global culture, that it is fractured in a way that feels irreparable. So at the highest level, we're looking at that. We're looking at this kind of like move from a narrative, which was for a time dominant, which was one world. Remember that? Like the 90s, like Coca-Cola, before that, like the 70s, even though the CIA is like orchestrating coups in South America and like all this crazy stuff is happening, there's still this global narrative of like one world, it's a global village, like that kind of thing. And of course the Cold War is happening. So there's like, it's not clear, but it's clear that the dominant message was. And then postmodernism came to ascendancy and made that seem naive and made that seem like cynical propaganda or something. And since then, there has been no approach to that conversation about global intimacy at the level of, do we all want to be part of one humanity? And now modernity was saying like, we are, whether you like it or not, and it looks like this, and you have to buy our shit and use our money, and now you're part of humanity. If I can be cynical postmodernist about it. There are other things that modernity did that were actually amazing. So, but from a postmodern perspective, that was the view. But then postmodernism had no answer. It was basically like, no, it's all shit. We all hate each other, and the most powerful groups win. And you're like, geez, that's a bummer. Like, that creates a sense of, like I said, irreparability, of fracture, of the highest order of global culture. There's no unity. And then if you go down into the intimate minutiae of our life worlds, that unpacks into the mechanicalization and kind of like bureaucratic and financial and legal colonization of that life world. Which means that our own experiences become denuded of intimacy through their mechanicalization. So doctor's appointments are probably one of the greatest examples of this. Some forms of public transportation, but not all. Most forms of work in large bureaucracies. And almost all interactions with the federal government are large, kind of like state-run apparatuses, and of course large companies, transnational companies like AT&T and Amazon and places like that are increasingly able to deal with the life world of their customers without actually engaging the life world of their customers. Which didn't used to be the case. It used to be like you go to the store and you like see the saleswoman and you've seen her before, and you're dealing and you're talking and you're getting your thing and you're driving home and seeing neighbors as you're doing that, and not anymore. Now they're even imagining doing therapy with bots, with AI chatbots, right? And so that's like the extreme of that, is that even your own mind is actually just the apocalypse of an enormous mechanical control structure. Apocalypse meaning the end, or like the finality, or like the horizon of conclusion of this vast inscrutable matrix of mechanical control is a little chatbot talking to you, telling you shouldn't be depressed. So that sense of the intimacy disorder being at the highest order of culture, and then kind of like woven through the textures of our life world increasingly so, to the extent that we have to feel like we have to protect our most intimate relationships from the kind of social system that seeks to like prey upon us and like steal our time from each other and kind of like ruin our conversations and make them all about money and like all of that stuff that makes it, even our own families become non-intimate because of the interference of this vast system that we that we really don't understand and don't feel like we have a lot of control over. So in the book, we lay out, I forget how many, 13 or a large number of instantiations of the intimacy disorder, the global intimacy disorder. And it's the root of existential risk fundamentally, meaning that the reason, if everyone dies, it's going to be, no one wants everyone to die. If everyone dies, it'll be a mistake. Like if everyone dies, it'll be some big accident, and it will be the result of the absence of intimacy. It'll be some mechanical or game theoretically perceived as inevitable, or bureaucratically mandated through, authority. So there's a bunch of things that the intimacy disorder makes probable that are super bad, so that's a little bit of a word into it. I could go other places with it, that's maybe.
Yeah. And how do you see that also playing into what you call maturation and the fact that the meta crisis is a crisis and maturation?
Well, again, at the highest level, we've been faced since the existence of the atomic bomb, probably, but maybe even earlier than that, with a question of whether we will mature to be a species that can be responsible for its technological creativity. And this is the case with a human being. So if you're an adolescent, at a certain point, you go through a growth spurt. Like there was a kid in my high school who, by the time he was 16, was like 6'1" and like 200 pounds and looked like a man. And it was very important that he become a mature person fast. Way more important than this little scrawny kid, because he was so big and powerful that there was a pressure by the coaches, by teachers, by his parents, even by men, just be in his presence, being like, dude, you gotta grow up. Like, you're a man. Like, or I'm gonna kick your ass, right? Because you need to learn. Like, but no one else got that pressure. And it was genetics and probably some other stuff that resulted in that. And he was a great football player. But we are like that. We went through this growth spurt with technology. And we now, just like in adolescence, could kill ourselves by accident because we're so strong. Don't even know our own strength. Don't even really take seriously how much power we have. And so there's been this request made upon humanity to step into maturity, to be wielding of that power. But it takes pressure, and it takes time. We've not had time. Technology has been just like a growth spurt in adolescent, going much, much, much faster than the slower rate of learning that occurs in domains like moral development, where you just need a lot more. It's not like a math problem. You figure it out once and you're done, and then you can build a giant weapon. Ethical reasoning requires years and years and years of rich experience in different contexts and all these stories that you hear. And so there is a kind of like weird, sometimes we speak about a perverse asymmetry between the rate at which technological change can easily occur and the rate at which moral and ethical learning can easily occur. And they're not comparable, which is why most of the wisdom traditions and most wisdom is associated with restraint. Like, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it, is like canonical wisdom. And so that would, we know that already, but the technologists are so persuasive and the shit they make is so cool. And it's hard to perceive it as risky as it actually is. And so, yeah, we have no brakes on the technological development thing and no steering wheel. But we do have brakes on the ethical learning thing because of postmodernity, which says there's no such thing as ethical learning, which says there's no non-arbitrary conversation about the good life, which means there's no way to not be bullshitting your kid when you tell him one way to grow up is better than another way to grow up. And that makes it impossible for ethical learning to occur. Now, you don't say, hey, there's a better or worse way to be a computer. You don't say there's no better or worse computer programmers that make $500,000 versus not being hired. You don't say that, because the kid will go out there and figure out like, oh, actually, I'm a bad computer programmer. But you do say it's an arbitrary conversation, computer program is not arbitrary, but the good life is arbitrary. And so again, that's a break on moral and ethical development. But there's no brakes on the technological development. So even when the rate of learning is slower, it means you should not put the brake on. You should put the brake on the other stuff, which is right. So what parents intuitively do with girls and boys that grow up fast is try to stop them from growing up so fast. And what they mean by that is basically like you're looking like and have the physical abilities and will soon be able to convince people that you're much more powerful than you are, but you are a little kid. You don't know anything. You don't know how the world works, right? And that's super precarious situation for many adolescents to be in. And so we are in that kind of situation where we need to kind of like be grounded for a while. Or something, and that's where the pauses on the AI development stuff, like you get the intuition, which is kind of like, wait, just slow down. Let this other part of you catch up. And then when you go out next summer, I can trust you, because right now you go out, you'll drink and you'll drive that car and God knows what will happen. 5 years ago, you would have had one beer and fallen asleep because you were a little kid, but now you're a freaking grown man. You could really get drunk and go crazy out there. Like, let's ground you until I trust you. But there's no parents in the room, and they're claiming to be the parents, meaning that the tech feudalists with the most power and technological capacity are claiming to be the ones who are kind of like showing up to clean up the mess. And they may try to clean up the mess, and it'll make a much worse mess.